Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming very much. I am Dan Harary. I'm the chairman of HDA. Thank you. This is an incredible turnout. Thank you. You know, when you have a special superstar to come and spend some time with us, it's a special day, really. I'm very happy to have him here. Before we get started, just a few things. We're live streaming today for the first time. I hope it works. I hope it goes well. Nate back there, thank you, Nate. We're live streaming to the HDA YouTube channel. You know, all 23 people will be watching this live, you know, in Czechoslovakia and Greece, apparently. And that'll be about it. A lot of regulars here today. Thank you guys for supporting us for all these years. It's been almost 3 years. And a lot of new faces. And a lady just asked me, what is HDA and how do you join? HDA is, as far as we know, it's the world's only nonprofit networking organization that marries, blends, and networks together two disparate groups of people. UAP and ET researchers, experiencers, and disclosure advocates. And my partner, Steve Bassett, couldn't be here today. And the other group are Hollywood/entertainment industry, writers, producers, directors, performers. And Thomas Jane, who's going to be here, just said, Dan, I have a terrible cold. So Thomas Jane promised me, swore he'd be here, Paul. No, he's not coming. He's not coming. So anyway, we have quarterly events, not like this, sort of. The next event, if you want to mark your calendars, April 12th at the Whitefire Theater, which is our little theater in Sherman Oaks. We're having HDA Experiencers Day. And some of my friends, Mark Glenmore, Michael, who else? I think I already have Sandy. So we're going to have a series of experiencers, and it's going to be like speed dating. It's like each person's going to get 15 minutes to tell us about their abduction experience, and it's like, okay, time's up. Ding and ding ding. I'll do a little ding, and then the next person will talk about their UFOs. It's going to be speed dating, April 12th in Sherman Oaks. I'll send out a notice about that. I mentioned that we're live streaming. Thank you all the new faces that are here today. It's very cool that you're here to support us and to turn out. If you want to come to the after party and you don't know about it, see me at the end of this. It's at 4:30 at the El Cholo Restaurant, Santa Monica. $35 at the door if you have not already prepaid. And most of you are going to be at the party. It'd be very sweet. Very important announcement. If you need to go to the restroom, you got to talk to Kirsten at the front door, and she'll give you the secret code. There's a secret code. You have to have the secret code, and the restroom is through the parking lot. To your left, there's a building that says B, letter B like boy, and then you have to have the secret code, or else it's going to be a very long day. So find Kirsten if you need to go to the restroom. Okay, I'm really happy and very pleased to welcome our very special guest today. Upon its release in 1987, Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, I'm sure you all probably have read this, was an enormous sensation. It hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, sold millions of copies, and made Whitley Strieber a household name. But Whitley is much more than this one book. He was already an accomplished and very successful novelist before the events relayed in Communion ever took place. To date, he has written over 30 books. That's a lot, Whitley. When do you sleep, man? 30 books. 4 of them have been turned into feature films. Wolfen, The Hunger, Communion, and the coming global superstorm, which came out with the title The Day After Tomorrow. Who's seen most of those films? In addition, his book Alien Hunter became the sci-fi TV series called Hunters. Whitley runs the largest web platform devoted to all things alien and paranormal called unknowncountry.com. He is also the host of the long-running podcast called Dreamland. Who's heard Dreamland? You've got a lot of fans here, my friend. Whitley has led a life of extreme high strangeness. That's an understatement. The events in Communion were just some of them. Whitley's strange experiences have ranged from paranormal abductions, UAP sightings, and meditating with non-human presences, say that 3 times fast, to telepathic communication with the dead, and even what Whitley has called lurid alien sex. Well, of course, we got to talk about that. I don't have any sex of any kind. At this point, lurid alien sex, it wouldn't be all that bad, quite frankly. Quite frankly. Whitley refers to the non-human intelligent beings he's long interacted with as the visitors. He's open to a variety of explanations for the phenomenon, and he embraces the possibilities of parallel universes, time travel, and an endless multiverse of matter, energy, space, and time. I'm almost done. I've read Communion, I think 2 or 3 times, and I've seen the film of the same name starring Christopher Walken probably 5 times. Who's seen that movie? Every time I see that movie, and Christopher Walken's in his bedroom, and they're coming in, and he's like, "What? What?" It's probably the creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I wonder what would I do besides cry like a little girl if that were to happen to me. And maybe my dog would protect me, but he's a pussy, probably not. Before I bring him up here on stage, I'd like to read the very first page of Communion, which I really enjoyed. When you read this incredible story, do not be too skeptical. Somewhere in your own past, there may be some lost hour or strange recollection that means that you also have had this experience. This book is about forming a new relationship with the unknown. Instead of shunning the darkness, we can face straight into it with an open mind. When we do that, the unknown changes. Fearful things become understandable, and a truth is suggested. The enigmatic presence of the human mind winks back from the dark. I think that's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the one and only Whitley Strieber.
Oh, I have to sit down. Oh, okay, fine. That's great. I like it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so comfortable. It's very interesting because my brother called me the other day and said, you realize you're talking in a comedy club. And I said, these people are foolish. They have no idea what might happen if I'm in a comedy club. I love comedy. But we're not talking comedy today. At least we don't think so, but there are those who do think so. I'd like to begin with, he spoke about me publishing a number of books, and it's quite true. I've got another one coming out in February called Transformation 2026. And what it is back in the late 80s, I started going out after I realized these little beings were real, that they were actually real. I started going out in the woods at night, which was an enormous struggle because, it was really scary, to be honest with you. But I wanted to indicate that I was interested because, frankly, and it was true of my wife as well, of Anne as well, our curiosity was greater than our fear, which is probably why we are all here today. That tends to be sort of fundamental to the human being. And we've often had our toes burned because of this over the course of our history, and that'll continue. But so what? I'm not going to hide in the back of the cave, and you probably aren't either. So, in any case, because of that, they did respond, and they did start interacting with us. And we had then 3 years of the most extraordinary interaction with them. And I published 2 books, Transformation and Breakthrough, which are chronicles of this. And now, all these years later, they are the only chronicles of what it's like to live day to day with these beings they call the Greys in your life. What's it like? You said something about, I had supposedly said lurid alien sex. I hadn't realized that I've started to talk tabloid, but I guess it's possible. In any case, it became an extraordinary and intimate experience. the books were published. Two things happened. First, they were before their time, and second, they were beaten to death in the media because by that time the drums they were a rolling, and I was a pariah of the first order. So they didn't get much play, but now they're very important because this is coming into focus. They will show up one way or another in our world. And a lot of us are going to live with them, same way Ann and I and our little boy did. And it's going to be hard, and it's going to be fascinating, and it's going to be transformative and fun and dangerous and a whole lot of other things as well. So this is from the book. This is just a paragraph. Official disclosure is one thing. Whether it happens or not, it will not necessarily be accompanied by the appearance of our visitors. If that happens, it will be because enough of us have understood how to respond, not with a kneel, but with an independent curiosity that seeks to understand more and to know more, and is willing to try to make the relationship happen, fear or no fear. There, right there in our minds and hearts and their minds and hearts is the beginning. Two brilliant species, each terrified of the other, and believe me, they are very much scared of us, but willing to try to build a relationship anyway. And that is absolutely what this is about.
Whitley, I have about 57 questions for you.
What is the format? I don't even know.
Oh, I ran them past you. You said they were fine.
What?
I ran them past you. You said they were
Oh,
fine.
yeah, you did.
Well, I was going to ask you questions and then.
It's a
we-
Q&A.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay,
yeah.
fabulous. Let's go.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll go sit down with
I love it.
my brother Ron and Paul. Okay. This is, Whitley Strieber, this is your life, apparently. You're from San Antonio, Texas. Please tell us a little bit about I want to get the big picture, what your parents did and what were some of your interests as a young child?
Oh, I was a very dangerous little boy. I can assure you that you are looking at the only person who blew off a hand grenade under a house at the age of 12, a real hand grenade. And long story. Shorter story is what happened to me afterwards, which was my father was rather annoyed. I grew up in I grew up in a very interesting situation. We lived in a house and sort of on a ridge with some other houses. And then down the ridge, there was a little street, a small street with some smaller houses on it. And my father was a very, very contained man. His brother Mickey was at Wright Field when the debris was brought to Wright Field from Roswell, and along with General Twining and Mickey's friend, General Arthur Exon, neither of them were generals then, and a number of other officers, they examined the debris and the bodies there. So I didn't know anything about this at the time at all. My father did, though. And what role my father played in all of this, I do not know. However, one thing that happened was that a Colonel Guy Hicks, Colonel Hicks was the officer in command at the air base that Captain Mantell was flying from when he crashed in pursuit of a flying saucer. And the Air Force cashiered Colonel Hicks. And there was a lot of controversy about it at the time. And it developed later that it was pretty clear that this was one of the many shoot downs that have occurred over the years. There's been many, many of them. It's not the first one. So Colonel Hicks and his family lived on that street. Across the street from us was an FBI agent that my dad used to take long walks with at night. And then we were there. And my sister and I would be sent over to the Hicks's house every once in a while to play. And when we came back, Daddy was very subtle, but he would know everything we talked about within 10 minutes of our returning home. And I think if I had ever said something like, oh, the Colonel talked about flying saucers, they would have been in trouble. But that never happened. That's all I know about my dad. He's on the surface, he was an oil man, an expert in titles, and a lawyer, a very good one, a very, very successful man. It was a happy go lucky kind of a life. I was a wild child, a really wild child. And give you an idea of, well, I'll tell you the hand grenade story. Why not? This is just one of many. I could tell you the burning down of Mike's room story. I could tell you the toaster explosion story. I could tell you the exploding fireplace on Christmas Eve story. Many, many stories like that. Well, anyway, the Fort Sam Houston is part of it was right across this little uh, highway called the military highway from our houses. We boys used to go over there, and we went over because they had a lot of, it's called the proving ground back there. And when you'd heard them shooting machine guns and stuff, we'd all jump on our bikes, and a bunch of little boys, followed by a gaggle of dogs, would go over there, sneak in past the deadly force signs, do not enter, and lie on the back of this big berm that was up there that they were shooting against, and stick hats up on sticks in hopes of getting bullets through. So they thought they were in there, and they were, this is all very secure. We're really serious here. What they didn't know, what they couldn't see, was there's this little gang of kids and dogs capering around behind them, where they couldn't see, trying to get, because you could sell a hat with one of those bullet holes in it at school for a quarter. And a quarter in those days in the 50s meant something. Anyway, one time we found a hand grenade, and it was lying there, and it was, it was not obviously not exploded. And so I tossed it, and this is why I believe in guardian angels. I tossed it in the saddlebag of my bike, and we all went riding home with this hand grenade bouncing around in my saddlebag. And we took down the Encyclopedia Britannica to figure out how it worked. And we did figure it out. It's not complicated. So we decided to defuse it. And we had little boys in a storage room and a tool room diffusing a hand grenade, where our parents thought everything was fine. They were having a nice day. Dad was at the office, mother was in the house, and little did they know that their son and two other little boys were diffusing a hand grenade with pliers in the. So we take out the fuse, and the way these things worked, it's a fuse, it's a tungsten fuse, and you pull the pin, a glass vial of acid breaks, that burns through the fuse at approximately 60 seconds. And then, but by that time, you've presumably thrown the hand grenade, unless you accidentally dropped it in your pocket. So that thing is about 3/4 eaten through. We throw that aside. We figure out how to refuse it with a glow plug from a model airplane engine. So we do this, and this is Christmas Eve. I'm known for Christmas explosions, by the way, numerous of them, including the year I accidentally burned down my brother's entire Christmas. But in any case, we were hanging around in Christmas Eve. It was about 7 o'clock at night. There's a big party going on at our house, so we weren't allowed in the house. No little boys allowed. The girls could go to the parties, but they knew we would steal liquor, so we weren't allowed. So we decided to blow off the hand grenade. We take it down to the foot of the hill where there's a culvert. It goes under a house, and under the house has a lovely lake. These are beautiful homes here. A lovely lake in the front yard. And so we go up in this culvert under this whole thing. It's to take rainwater out under the house so that the lake won't flood when it rains. We put the hand grenade in there and we run wires out. We touch it to a model airplane battery, and it's big old batteries, and that hand grenade explodes. Now, you can be sure that people are not used to the sound of a hand grenade exploding in their neighborhood. And it was very dramatic. I mean, the battlefield must be a very noisy place because this was a big gut of fire shot out of the culvert, and there was the whing of shrapnel, and then voices calling, "Hey, what happened?" And people running out of the houses. In the house that was above the culvert, you could see they'd been having Christmas Eve dinner. You could see them all leap up and start running around the house. And we ran home, backed up to my house, because obviously it had been a little bit more noisy than we had expected. And I don't know why we didn't expect it. So we go running in. Mother says, they're all out in the front yard, all the parties out in the front yard. "What have you done?" I said, "Nothing, Mother." "Well, why are you running?" "There was an earth," she said. "Why are you running? The whole ground, the ground shook." We said, "Yes, there was an earthquake. That's why we're running." Next morning is Christmas morning, and we have a lovely Christmas. Dad afterwards says, "Let's take a ride." And whenever Dad said something like, "Let's take a ride," or "Come down to my office, why don't you?" You knew it was trouble. So we took a ride. We go down the street, and he says, "Look at the lake there. What do you suppose happened?" And it's gone. It's just black mud and lily pads. It was a disaster of the first order. And I think, this is going to be a problem. So I say, "Gosh, I wonder what happened." He said, "Well, they do too. What do you think happened?" Of course, he's sure it has something to do with me, but he doesn't know exactly what. And I said, "Well, gee, Dad, I just don't know." He said, "Well, we might have to talk to him a bit later," but it never came up again. So that's the story. Next question.
That's a great story.
And that's
Thank
my
you.
childhood.
Okay, blowing up buildings with grenades. Okay, good. That's great. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. 2 nights in 1985, October 4th and December 26th, changed your life forever. You were with your family at your cabin in upstate New York each time. This was just over 40 years ago, which is really incredible. Please share with us some of the major moments from each of those 2 nights.
Okay. Well, the first night, what happened was not, I had, at that point in my life, I'd had a lot of experience with the visitors when I was a child. Compliments, I think, probably of my dad, who was deep in this, I think, but I don't know how. In any case, by that time, it was out of my life, and I had completely forgotten it. I now know enough about how memory works to understand why I forgot my childhood experiences. My son's forgotten his too for the same reason. In any case, on the first night, the one in October, we had 2 friends there, Jacques Sandulescu and Annie Gottlieb. And Annie's still very much with us. And they were in situation was the cabin had 2 floors. Downstairs was a great room, a kitchen dining room, and 2 bedrooms, and upstairs was a master bedroom. Ann and I were in the master bedroom. Our son was in the bedroom on the corner, and Jacques and Annie were in the guest bedroom beside that. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, this huge light just came blasting in all around us, and it woke me right up. And it was cold, and we had the stove going, the wood stove going, and I thought the roof was on fire. So I jumped out of bed, and at that moment, there was an explosion, and the light went out at the same time, and obviously the roof wasn't on fire. I could hear our son screaming downstairs. He was terrified because this was no small thing. It was not like a lightning bolt or something. It was a much bigger deal. And so I ran downstairs. Annie was at or Jacques were up and at the door of their uh, bedroom, and I ran past them saying it's okay, it's everything is all right, and went in to comfort my son. Later, and we talked about it very little. It was just something that had happened in the night, and I don't think we spoke about it at all the next day. We may have in the morning briefly, but interestingly enough, uh, after communion was being when it was being written and researched, there was a decision made by Bud Hopkins and the people who were working with him to see what would happen if they interviewed Jacques and Annie. And so, not under hypnosis, they just interviewed them, and not without asking them, without leading. They simply said, "Well, do you remember anything? You remember when you went to Whitley and Ann's place in the country?" And they said, "Yes, we do. That was the night of that big light." And they remembered it very well. But the thing that's odd is that Annie remembered hearing little feet scurrying away in the overhead for out leaving our bedroom, and she had assumed it was our cats. Only our cats weren't there that weekend, and so in that interview, she just said that she heard the cats scurrying away, and then Whitley came down and said it was all right, and we went back to sleep. And Jacques said that when he woke up, he was awakened because it was so light and it looked like daylight outside. He got up because he thought it was like 10 o'clock in the morning and he'd overslept. And then the light just went away. So that's that night. And that's really all I have about it from that night. Later, there was more. But
In the movie, the next day at breakfast, your friends Jacques and Annie wanted to leave. Was that wrong? In the
I
movie?
don't remember whether they wanted to leave actually or not.
It's in the movie.
Well,
but
yeah,
doesn't
but
mean
you've
it's
got to
right.
have conflict in a movie or no
Yeah.
one's going to watch it.
Okay. Okay. No, that's fine.
Whatever it says in the book, I don't recall them being.
Upset. the
I
next
think
day.
they did actually want to leave. Yeah, I think that did happen. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next time was then right after Christmas. It was you, Anne, and your son.
Right.
Just the three of you, and that was that was the big one. Take us through the big one.
Well, I'd like to talk just briefly about the months between
Sure,
October
sure.
and Christmas. That change was when I began to change. Without understanding why, I became terrified. I started like patrolling the house at night. There's a company called Radio Shack in those days. A lot of you probably remember Radio Shack. I remember it very fondly because it was the source of many, many devices and things I had when I was a boy.
But not hand grenades, I don't think.
Anyway, so I got an alarm system from Radio Shack and installed it. And I bought a Benelli riot gun, which is a very serious, big-time shotgun, and an AMT backup, a little pistol. And Anne was saying, "What are you, crazy? She even called the sheriff and made me talk to him." And the sheriff was embarrassed. Because he's sort of being sort of getting a salary to protect people. And he said, "Well, frankly, Mr. Strieber, there hasn't been a robbery or anything in that area during my career and where we lived." I said, but I was terrified that someone was coming in the house. And I would patrol the house at night, hour after hour. And I would walk around outside with a shotgun. Contrary to the movie, I did not shoot off the shotgun in the house. If that had happened, I would be shaped differently, thanks to my wife at this point in my life. In any case, so then to go on, the day after Christmas was very pleasant. It was beautiful, beautiful night. There's a little bit of snow falling, and the snow was the flakes. You look in a microscope at a snowflake, and it's beautiful, beautifully constructed. All these crystalline structures. That they were so big that when they fell on the back of your hand. They were that size. And so we were sort of looking at these flakes. It was very quiet. And there was a real sacred feeling of sacredness about the place. Little did I know that the uh, Hudson Valley UFO business was in full swing just across the Hudson River. I'd never heard of any of it. I'd never thought about UFOs since I was a child. And we went to bed normally. We had a nice dinner of leftovers from Christmas dinner. And I woke up in the night because there was a sense of, I felt like I was, like had Anne gotten up? There seemed to be people around anyway. And when I opened my eyes, they were something around, but they did not strike me as people. It was like I was in a room full of giant insects. That's what it looked like. It was appalling. And I couldn't move. I couldn't get up. And I kept trying to make my bed reappear around me, trying to wake up from this obvious nightmare. And at one point during the thing, I thought, well, this is going to be a great horror story one of these days. This nightmare. I mean, it never crossed my mind that it was real until they raped me. Which incidentally I ended up being I think the only person who has experienced being laughed at publicly for being raped by an entire planet full of people. And I have been laughed at for the rectal probe for years. It's made a mockery of on South Park, and there's an awful lot of men who are very nervous about their sexuality, and that just reached them in the wrong way. And boy, I have suffered from it because
Whitley, do you regret that you included that part in the book?
I had to tell the whole story. What I do regret is using the phrase rectal probe because I was too shy to say the truth in that rape. In the new edition of Communion, and I say it outright, rape. That's what it was. It was bad. I suffered from the scar tissue for 20 years. I still have stuff I use every once in a while because it was a severe rape. But in any case, initially I didn't feel anything much from it. And I remember the room vividly. It was very small, and it was crowded. There were a lot of these little beings in there. I'm not sure they were all had the same form or configuration. One or two of them were taller, some of them were shorter, and some of them had an entirely looked very different. Like in the movie, the dark blue figures in the movie are very accurate. That's really what they look like. And I don't know how long it went on, but I really fought. I mean, I was struggling to live. I mean, it was awful. And the next morning, I woke up and I had this needle mark in the side of my head, this little thing, and I sort of ignored that because I couldn't believe. I just couldn't believe it had happened. It happened. But then eventually, I was so distressed. I wrote a short story called Pain, which is, unfortunately for me, it makes it. I sort of looks like the writing of a masochist, is into being beaten up. And Anne reads the story and she says, "This looks like you want to be whipped or something." I said, "I don't want to be whipped." She said, "Sure you do. Let's get started right now." I said, "Oh no." And but it give you an idea of the mindset. I was so strung out and disturbed in a heavy duty state of shock. PTSD, I guess they call it now. Didn't know that. Was trying to make sense of something that made no sense and was very, very provocative. So I went to the doctor and I told him the story of what I remembered at that point. And he says, he was the first person to say flying saucer. He said, "You're telling me you think you were taken aboard a flying saucer by little men?" And I thought, holy shit. I said, "Yeah, that does sound what it sounds like, isn't it?" I didn't tell him about the rape at that point. And he said, "Well, listen, I think first we need to do an MRI and he lists a bunch of tests, temporal lobe epilepsy, all hallucinations, and because it didn't occur to him or me that it had been real, even though I was in pain. We were just not. No one wrapped their mind around that. But then the pain continued, and I went back, and he examined me, and he says, "Whitley, you have a tear in your rectum." And I thought, some bastards came in here and did this. They must have used drugs or something, and they roughed me up. And I had been warned by one of Ted Kennedy's assistants after he read parts of the book War Day on the floor of the Senate that the administration did not look kindly on the book, and they had a tendency to be pretty mean. And I would better watch out. And I thought they were talking contextually in like a political tax audit, which was a commonplace thing in those days. And so I thought it was a crime. So I called the New York State Criminal Investigation Division. They sent a guy out. He talked to me. I said I did this happened, and he said, if you have any evidence at all, give us. We can anything for us to start with. That would be very helpful. But you can't say exactly. It happened somewhere in the woods. Apparently, you're telling me, and I just don't know where to start. But obviously, you've been injured, and we would really like to help you. And I didn't know what to do. And so at the same time, I read this book called Science and the UFOs, and in it, Bud Hopkins' name was mentioned and there was a strange story about some weirdo gotten abducted by aliens. And I thought, well, it's odd because it sounds just like what happened to me. And Ann said, well, why don't we looked him up in the phone book. It said he lived in New York, and he lived right near us. So we called him, and I went over to see him, told the story, and he was absolutely convinced that I was been abducted by aliens, which I thought was absolutely completely ridiculous. And he wanted to hypnotize me. And I saw that he's an artist. I didn't see any certificates, professional certificates on his wall. So I said, no, you'd have to find me a professional. So he did, and he found me probably the best professional in the world, Dr. Donald Klein. 72 cases solved by his forensic hypnosis prior to his hypnosis of me.
Whitley, in the movie, it was a woman, so obviously it was not a woman.
It was a movie, not a real, not reality.
Yeah, one of my questions was, what if you could do the movie over? What would you have them do over differently?
The movie?
Yeah, what parts of the movie pissed you off if they were done incorrectly?
The whole movie.
Really? But you said the little blue guys.
Okay. We'll go on to the movie. I'm not like Christopher Walken portrayed me at all. I don't run around with a camera. I'm very staid and quiet normally. I've sowed my wild oats and blown up my neighborhoods, and that's in the past. And I live a very quiet life, and I have always since then. And I lived that life then. But Chris is kind of over the top in the movie. Lindsay Krause thought I was a complete jerk, and I think that she does a good acting job because she didn't think any of it was worth anything. She's stupid, thought it was stupid.
You were on set during filming, correct?
Yeah, I was a lot on set.
Were you just shaking your head like, no, that's...
No, not at all. They got my script. I wrote the script. And the director said, this is absolutely fabulous. Let's get started. Over the shoulder. What happens when you do a pitch. Whitley, we love it. It is so exciting. We're so excited. Oh, great. So you're going to pick it up? Oh, no. There's a great book about Hollywood called Hello, He Lied. Read it sometime. It's very funny. in any case, the movie is effective. The movie moves people. The movie talks to people, and so it's good in that respect. I'm the subject of the movie, the writer of the book, the writer of the script. Of course, I'm going to complain about it, but it still does its job.
After the book, I guess in the movie as well, you and Anne got thousands and thousands of letters from all over the world from experiencers. And I know for a fact there are many experiencers in this room right now, including myself. There's a lot of experiencers here, and that's why I think the turnout is so good. The letters are now at the Archives of the Impossible at Rice University,
That's right.
I believe. What did you get? What did you and Anne think about the incredible response you got from these letters all over the world?
Well, it was astonishing. We didn't expect it. Bud's theory, we were theorizing about how many people this had happened to. Bud thought it was maybe as few as 50 and maybe as much as 200 in the world. That, it was a very rare experience, we thought. What none of us knew, but the visitors, in particular the lady on the cover of Communion, probably knew very well, was that book was initiating contact. And that face was hitting people with just in between the eyes all over the planet. And they were all connecting this strange dream or something to seeing that face. I had no idea that would happen. I wish I could say, oh yeah, we decided to initiate contact. No, not at all. What happened to me was I ended up going out on television and being confronted with rectal probe jokes. But anyway, under the surface, this was happening, and people started writing letters. They sat down and they wrote a letter. They wrote a letter, long letters, some of them long. People were pouring their hearts out, and what happened to us was that these letters started being brought up to the house in big baskets by the post office and just heaped on our living room floor. And I was looking through them, and they were intimate stories of these extraordinary, compelling experiences that people had had. And their names and addresses were on there, and they wanted to communicate with me and to get this out there and get it, understand what had happened to them. I said to Ann, what are we going to do? We can't throw these out because there's all these names and addresses and all this intimate stuff, and we can't possibly read them all. What are we going to do? And she said, well, you might be able to read them, but I can't. And so she was very brilliant. We met through a dating service in New York, and by the time I was 20, when we met, I had made a definite life decision. I had to marry a girl who was as smart as me, or preferably smarter. I got the smarter one, and so she could sit down. She could read a complex novel in 2 hours, and she was an amazingly brilliant human being.
So Anne
And took over the letter.
She responded to every single letter?
No, she responded to as many as she could. And Anne being Anne, she often would sign my name. And you can see these letters from me with my name signed on them that I never even saw, because she read them all, and she cataloged this complex cataloging system. She cataloged them, she filed them, and she came out of her office one day in the apartment, and said, I need a secretary. I said, oh, I'll call Manpower. She said, no, don't do that. I'll find the secretary in the letters. I thought, that's highly unlikely. But she was like very psychic. About an hour later, she comes out with a letter. She says, this lady will be our secretary. And I read the letter, and she's a singer, and she's an incredible experience, but she's a singer and an actress. And I said, well, she's not a secretary here. She's a singer and an actress. He says, oh, no. Do you know her? You ever heard of her? I said, no, I have not. Well, then she's doing something else. And look, that's the handwriting of a professional. I'm going to call her, because she lives right down the street. Her name was Lori Barnes, and she was Anne's secretary for the next 15 years. and they did the letters, they made it happen.
It's terrific. I would
And
love to see
their
that
letters are
archive.
at Rice because of them, because of Anne and Lori.
Once you began retro hypnosis, you realized that you had a number of experiences as a child that you had forgotten. Can you give us maybe one or two examples of
Yeah,
those?
I can remember some of them. One thing I remembered all my life without, it's a kind of free floating memory. I couldn't relate it to anything. And normally the brain will file a memory like that away and you forget it until there's a mnemonic that comes into your life and then you remember again. This was of a being in a dark blue thing like a that I perceived to be like one of those life rafts from the wartime days that with big inflatable life rafts and floating over the neighborhood and leaning over the side of it and having these little men gasping and trying to pull me back because they were afraid I would fall off, and how fun that was. And it never occurred to me that it had anything to do with aliens. It was just some memory that floated into my mind every once in a while. But after, when it was the most extraordinary thing, I was in this hypnosis session with Don, and he suddenly says, "How old are you?" And if some of you, I'm sure a lot of you have been hypnotized. You don't like disappear. You can hear everything that's going on. And I heard my voice say in this little Texas twang, 12. And I thought, 12? And I proceed to tell these stories from my childhood. This weird story about being abducted with my father and sister from a train that we were going up to see some relatives in Kentucky. And we saw these soldiers on cots, and this being was there with the soldiers. And I tried to tell my dad that it was all right because he and my sister were standing off and they were obviously scared. And my dad said, "No, Whitty, it's not all right." And a wave of fear went through me at that moment. I remembered that under hypnosis, and it redefined my life. After that, the visitors left. They were in my life before that. My dad would take me out to our country house to meet them. Dad was involved. I don't know how. My uncle was involved too. I mean, he was deeply involved because he must have been very involved because he was transferred to the Atomic Energy Commission not about a year or two after the Roswell incident, and that's when the whole Roswell thing went to the AEC, according to what I understood from Stanton Friedman, and apparently my uncle went with it. God knows what he really knew or what they both were doing. Anyway, it took me out to the country house. I remember one incident very, very clearly. We go out there, nobody says anything, and it's night, and January, as I recall, and we go out on the front porch of the house. It's a very isolated, beautiful place, up on a hill. And we're on the front walk in front of the house, and this strange car comes up that has sort of dim lights, and it's moving very quickly, and it comes and it stops instantly. It doesn't like slow down. It just is going like 40 miles an hour, and then bang, it stops right by the house. Then this glowing square object comes tumbling through the sky and drops down into the pasture behind the house. And I can see it, the glow of it back there. And I'm totally calm. Dad is just standing there. He's frozen. And instead of being terrified, I remember walking back toward this thing and feeling very happy about it. That's all I remember. And it was never spoken of. something happened on a boat. My sister and I were on a boat with our dad and fishing. He used to get on a fishing charter. He'd charter a little boat, and we'd all go out and fish in the Gulf of Mexico. And something happened, and she couldn't remember what it was, but I disappeared from the boat. And then when we got back to Port Aransas, where the boat came from, it was all normal. But she said to me, and I think I quote her in communion, I understood that we were not to talk about it. And so that's childhood.
Okay, this is a long one. You've referred to the unknown entities you've experienced as the visitors.
Yes.
You don't use the term aliens or extraterrestrials. And you say they have the abilities of telepathy, telekinesis, and levitation. You've suggested that perhaps humans may have once shared those same abilities in the past. In your book, The Fourth Mind, which came out about a year ago, you describe the anatomy, genetics, beliefs, and abilities of the visitors. So if they're not aliens, what do you think they are?
Well, I think there's a good possibility that they are aliens. I do not think that they are on the same evolutionary tree as anything else on Earth. Because if I'm right about their brain structure, they have quadrispheric brains, and everything on this planet has a hemispheric brain. Everything, all the brains are divided into two parts. And this is something with a brain divided into four parts. That means that the fundamental evolutionary track that it's on is different from this one, if that's correct. And the reason I think that might be correct is that some anonymous individual drew my attention to a document on Reddit a couple of years ago, which is a detailed description of these entities of the grays by a biologist who had dissected their bodies at Fort Detrick in Maryland. I had heard for years from various people that there were bodies and that they were at Fort Detrick. General Exon, Arthur Exon, who was heavily involved in this in the early days, like my uncle, said to me that there were bodies, and we had them. And someone else at some point, probably Stanton Friedman, said that he thought that they were at Fort Detrick. So here's this biologist who was at Fort Detrick, and he's telling this very detailed story about the anatomy of these beings, and the first sentence in it describes something that I saw and just reported to Bud Hopkins, and it grossed him out so much. And he thought it was so weird that he said, don't ever say that to anyone. That'll be it. No one will believe you ever again about anything. And that's the first sentence. It's the way they evacuate waste. It comes out through pores in their skin. And they literally showed me that back in the 80s. I was trying to get into some kind of situation with them where I could take a picture or something, because I was being beat up bad in the media. I needed that. And they were, of course, extremely elusive. It's like trying to tame a wild bird. Anytime you'd get near them, they were gone. Or they could just disappear before your eyes if they wanted to. Anyway, there were 3 of them in the front yard. And I think that I woke up because the cats were very agitated. We were at the country house, and the cats, one of them was eventually killed in this thing. But the cats did this too. They were in this too. Wonderful couple of little cats. Anyway, I woke up, and there were 3 of them standing in the front yard, and they were brushing something off of their arms. And so I went downstairs, and they were still there. So I went out on the porch, and they were still there. And I went down the porch, He was still there. And I got maybe 12, 15 feet away from him, closest I'd ever been in normal consciousness. And they're brushing this stuff off, these flakes off of their arms, and there's a smell of ammonia in the air. And then I hear telepathically that they're evacuating waste from their bodies. And when I told Bud this, he says, Whitley, that's got to have been some kind of a dream. That can't be true. And, so I just shut up about it. He never wrote about it or said anything about it to anyone either, as far as I know. Then here it is, the first sentence in this document. And I thought, and then I read it, and it wasn't the only thing that comported with things I had seen. And I realized I can go through this document sentence by sentence and compare it to things I have seen, including many things nobody has ever written about. And that's how I got the anatomy put together.
In 1989, two human-looking beings appeared in your bedroom and implanted something into your left ear. Please tell us that story. And also, in your book, you say that English, or I read this somewhere, English words sometimes scroll past your right eye. So what's about the implant and the words scrolling by your eye?
Okay, well, first I'll tell about this. Happened in May of 1989. In one of my books, it says 1992, and there's probably researchers in here, and you'll notice this. It's a typo. It was supposed to say 89. And anyway, it's a May night. It's warm, very pleasant night. And the situation is this in the cabin. The front windows of the bedroom look out on a gravel driveway made of shale gravel. The back windows look out on a deck where there's a pool. And Ann and I are in this bedroom. And I am lying on the side of the bed closest to the driveway. The windows are open because it's a lovely night. And it's about 11 o'clock. Annie is asleep. And I'm reading. And I turn out the light, and I haven't just turning over, and I hear the crunch of gravel in the driveway. Now we have a great big stout gate there, and that means trouble because A, whoever it is got past the gate. B, there are no car lights. They did not turn on their lights, so it's trouble. I think to myself, I better get the floodlights on. And as I'm turning to, there's a bank of switches that will turn on floodlights that flood the area around the whole house. And as I'm moving toward that, I hear a voice in the backyard say, a male voice, human, say, condition red. At that same moment, I see a man and woman standing close to the foot of the bed. So forget the floodlights. I'm going for the shotgun under the bed. And I'm so glad I've never fired that shotgun at any of these beings or people. I'm very lucky I never did that. So
What did they look like?
What?
What did they look like?
The woman was a little shorter than the man. They were both wearing dark clothes like bodysuits or, maybe, sweaters and dark slacks. The man had a beard. I believe he might have had a red beard. I'm not sure. And the woman was just a normal looking woman. She's a perfectly nice looking woman. She looked in her 20s or 30s. And there was nothing about them that I would say indicated that they were from another world, although at times I sort of seem to remember something else in the room, but I can't ever place that. I'm not sure. So anyway, they were certainly there, and they immediately ran toward me. And the next thing I knew, I was lying on my right side, and I couldn't move. I could not see. And the woman's voice was speaking very softly and sweetly to me. I don't remember what she was saying. And the man was pressing this side of my head down into the pillow in waves like this. Or maybe it was her. I mean, one of them was doing that. And Then it stopped. There was a big flash of light and I believe a bang, and they got they ran away. You could hear crashing in the woods of like someone just dashing wildly through the woods behind the house. I jumped up, grabbed the pistol, noted that the alarm system was still armed. It was red, had not been breached. Ran through the whole house looking for any kind of breach of any kind that would have bypassed the alarm system. Didn't find anything wrong. Ended up sitting on the bedside thinking, well, this is proof. You must be completely crazy because there's no way anyone could got past that alarm system. Wrong. They did. The next morning, when I went to get the paper, I used to drive out to get the newspaper every morning, and because they didn't deliver where we were, it's too rural. It would left them at a newsstand down the road, and I opened the garage door. The alarm system is still on. I'm planning to disarm it in the garage. The garage door is wide open, even though the alarm system is still on. I call the alarm man, and it turns out there's this big, heavy-duty magnetic field hanging between the open garage door and the switch on the wall, and his system can't generate a magnetic field that big. So he changes out the switches. We try to download the record from the alarm system, but it's all garbled, doesn't make a bit of sense. And then 2 days later, my arm it starts to hurt, and I feel it, and there's a lump there. And I say I know Roger Lear at this point. We have been to California, been out here to see implant removals and everything, very into this. So I said, Ann, they've put an implant in me. I want to get it taken out. She said, why? Why don't you try to figure out what it's there for? I said, I don't want someone to track me everywhere I go. She said, no one cares. The fact that you go down and get a paper, or every once in a while you go to the 7-Eleven to get some soda waters or something. You don't do anything of any interest to anyone else whatsoever. So if they're tracking you, they're going to quit in a week. I said, well, wait a minute. She said, nope, no, wait a minute. Leave it in. Little did I know who I was really married to was a very special and extraordinary being. So years pass, we lose the cabin. I get all my finances. I'm never, I don't want to get into it, but suffice to say, after South Park came out with its first episode, and it was about a rectal probe, people will buy a book from someone who's controversial without question. Love it. But not from a laughingstock. You're not going to go into a bookstore and buy a book where the salesperson is going to smirk at you. So my sales of everything just dropped through the floor, and we lost the cabin. We went bankrupt, and we ended up in a little condo down in San Antonio.
You're not a laughing stock here.
Well, no, I'm not a laughing stock in a lot of places where I used to be. Also, things are turning around slowly but surely. Anyway, we happened to meet a doctor, and I said to him, oh, by the way, I've got this lump in my ear. And he's looking at me, and he feels it. He says, oh, yeah, it's a little cyst. I'll take it out for you. Come over to the office tomorrow morning. And she's like this. So we go over there the next morning, and she says to me, promise me this, one attempt and never again. I said, I swear, one attempt, never again. Does she already know the attempt will fail? I wonder. In any case, we videotape it, and the videotape is incidentally proof positive that there are anomalous objects out there. Here is a doctor on the videotape, and my wife, they see it, they comment that it's a white disc. When he touches it with the edge of his scalpel, it then does something nothing any human beings who are outside of the secret world can do. It moves from here down into my earlobe. And he comments on that. They see that happen on the video. He then puts a little stitch in it and sends us home. 2 days later, my ear starts burning and it moves back up to where it had been and where it is to this day. And after Annie passed away, it started working. Didn't work before that. It would occasionally would turn on. Oh, I was at Southwest Research in San Antonio, which was founded by a friend of my family, and his niece was on the board of directors. So we had free. We could go and do implant research there all we wanted, with the head of the materials science division, Bill Mallow, no less. So I'm out there with Bill one time, and we're talking, and suddenly the ear turns bright red, which it would do every once in a while. And he said, I think it might be signaling that your ear is turning bright red. We ran into a signals acquisition lab on the property, and I sat in there for a while, and they couldn't tell me anything about what if anything, they'd found because the lab was classified. So 20 years pass, and I'm signing books in San Antonio, and two guys walk up and say, we just want you to know that we were the technicians who radio examined your implant at Southwest. And to this day, it remains one of the strangest signals in the inventory. And then they turned around and walked out. So
It's still there.
I use it. It's become a tool, a working tool.
It doesn't bother you on it every day? It doesn't hurt?
I would never let it out of my body. I couldn't have written anything from Afterlife Revolution to the current book without it. It's an essential tool. It's a research tool. It's wonderful.
That's great. And then also you have a phenomenon of English words that scroll past your
the
eye.
words I'm looking, I think they might be here now, but they're not. They were doing this earlier. A slit opens up in my right eye, and you can see words racing past.
Are they English words?
English, yeah, but you can't. They go too fast. You can't read them, and if you try to read them, they go faster. I had a situation where a doctor connected with the Defense Department wanted to get a CT scan of the implant, which I did. But before that CT scan, there was apparently someone who knew about what was going on who did not want me to let that doctor have it taken out. And I'm not going to get into any details about some of this stuff because suffice to say, the two men came to the apartment in the middle of the night and they explained the implant to me and how it worked. The words that is material being drawn up from my memory that is lost to my conscious mind. And this is why when I'm on an interview or I'm writing or anything, I get this really in-depth memory because that's what I'm seeing there. And if I read it consciously, it wouldn't work. That's what he told me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I have a lot more questions, but we're an hour in, and I want to maybe go to some audience questions now, I think, just for a few minutes. I'm sure you guys have questions. Camille. Please stand. Can you stand?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it's very timely too, because as it happens, my show Dreamland, this week and next week, I'm having a lady called Desta Barnaby, who wrote a book called MK Ultra and Children. Now, this takes me back to my own early life at the age of 7. This is long before MK Ultra came around. This is 1952. Uh, the or I was recruited for a program that I believe was carried out at the Air Force lab at uh, Randolph Air Force Base that was run by Dr. Hubertus Strughold, a paperclip scientist from Germany, who, by the way, used to put Jews in tanks and watch them slowly die of asphyxiation and things like that in order to uh, create devices that would save pilots from high altitude sickness and things. And then he was at the US Air Force, and they always say, oh, he didn't use any of that data. I just laugh. Anyway, I started to get taken out there with my sister and the boy from across the street in August of July of 1952.
How old were you at that time?
7. And whatever happened, I just remember a lot of noise, and it was really scary, and it was Thursday nights, and it wasn't good, and I was under such tension, stress, that my immune system collapsed, and I ended up getting sick all the time, and they took me to the doctor, and the doctor said he has no white blood cells. He's under, must be something terribly stressful in his life. And so they took me out of the program, and I ended up at a military, a little 7-year-old boy at a military hospital, being isolation and shot full of gamma globulin, which they had stick in my arm. And these military doctors, they were used to, giving shots to great big men. I was like, my arms are like little sticks. Half the time, the needle would go through my arm, and the gamma globulin drip down my chest. So it was really rough. And then I had to be isolated. I couldn't go to school until the next January. I had to be isolated at home, and I spent all that time just at home. And it was terrible stress. I think my sister and my friend they never worked out in life. He died at age 53, and she just never had she never lived up to her own potential. I think they were destroyed by that program, frankly. And I wasn't, because for a simple reason, the visitor showed up in my life shortly after. And so there is a connection there. Now, I know it happened because I don't remember being recruited or anything, but to this day, closest friend I have in my life was in the living room when he was recruited. He's 2 years older than me. He was 9. And he heard them say that it involved use of a Skinner box to affect accelerated learning, and it was for children with extremely high intelligence, which we were, both of us. And that's all I can tell you about it. Is it familial, going back for generations with the visitors? I don't know. But I think that this thing cracked the cosmic egg for me, and they came in through the crack into my life when I was a kid after that.
Wow. Debbie, you have questions?
Hi, Debbie. Oh, thank you. My what? Yeah. Well, not too much now because, as you know, they're very secretive, and they're also extremely cranky. And I've had plenty of trouble talking too much about what they consider their private business. Um, they often will show up in the lives of people who work with me, which has happened a lot. And they, I wish I could tell you more detail, but I've already been beat up by. I mean, when I say beat up, uh, they scared me so badly. I jumped in the airplane and went to England to get away. When I made the mistake of there, I have an audio tape I made with the Sleep Talk app, and it the they weren't expecting it, and they came in, and it's on on the audio of the app, and I sent it to some friends in the have an interest in this, and the visitors went through the roof, and you do not want them to be angry at you because they don't just fuss at you. They can do a lot of other things. They threatened me with eternal confinement of my soul if I did that again.
That sounds pretty bad. You don't want.
So
you don't
that's
want,
why
you
I'm
don't
not
want
going to
that.
talk about it too
You
much.
don't want that. Questions? Yes, sir. Right here. Stand up, please.
All right?
Ben.
Yeah. Okay, sure. I love that question. And I'm sorry to be so. Wish I was could be more open, but I can't. Suffice to say, it's an extremely interesting relationship. It's very challenging and wonderful, and I'm glad I have it. And I'm just not going to cross them if I can avoid it, because they're cranky. They're just cranky. Uh, the uh,
Afterlife.
yeah, the one day Anne came out of her office when she was working on the letters, and she said, "Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, a lot of these people see dead friends and relatives in the context of close encounter situations. And that happened at our cabin all the time." Lori Barnes is a perfect example. She'd been a close encounter witness all of her adult life, not as a child, but as an adult. And uh, her brother had disappeared when they were younger, 25 or 30 years before we knew them. And the FBI had eventually given up on the case because they couldn't get any leads. And she was walking out of the cabin on the road one afternoon after lunch and just having a nice time by herself, enjoying the countryside. And suddenly her brother she showed up on the road, and she said, "Oh my God, how incredible. Where did you come from?" And he said, "I just wanted you to know that I'm fine." And she said, "Come down and meet my friends." And he just smiled at her and floated off through the woods and disappeared. And she came down to the house sort of like this. And Anne said, "Whitley, they'll show up tonight." And they did. They showed up to Laurie and to another friend, Raven Dana. And while they were upstairs, one of the little gray people was upstairs. In the basement, there were two other people sleeping who woke up to find a friend of theirs who had died in the 1983 Mexico City earthquake standing at the foot of the bed. And she said the same thing. "I just want you to know I'm all right." So there's a connection. We haven't really explored that very deeply. But this is not primarily about the bodies. Grays call us the bodies. It's about the souls. And you do have one. And this is why when they threatened my soul, I took that really seriously, really seriously. And they're over they're over they're just sort of over the top in general. I mean, they're very intense, and I don't think they would actually do that to me, but I can't be sure. So I'm very careful about them now. Anyway, there's a profound connection with the dead, and that's something that I think as we get closer to the grays, the veil between us and our own dead is going to get thinner and thinner and thinner until there is a confluence that we are in contact physically with the grays on a wider scale than now. And at the same time, our own dead have come forth into many, many lives. And we are becoming a whole species again. We will become complete again. We're broken now, broken.
I'm going to come back to questions in a few minutes. On June 6, 1998, Whitley, you were visited in a Toronto hotel room by a man who presented you with a new image of God. You call him the master of the key, and he inspired you to write a book called The Key, A True Encounter. Can you please take us through that experience?
Sure. He didn't inspire me to write it. My wife sat me down one day about a year later and said, "Write it, do it now," because I had taken some notes, and so what happened was this: it was turned out to be the last sort of official author tour I would ever have because my sales were in the process of cratering at the time, and so I was asleep. I got room service and I went to bed. There came a knock at the door, and the tray was still sitting on the little desk in the room. So I assumed that it was a room service waiter. I opened the door, and this man comes in. He's wearing dark clothes like you're wearing, actually, and just normal. I mean, and he doesn't stop at the tray. Instead, he walks all the way to the window, turns around, and starts talking. And I think, oh my God! I realized at this point it's not like 11; it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I've let someone who wants to talk to me into my hotel room at 2 o'clock in the morning. This might be difficult. And so I start saying to him, "Listen, you got to get out of here. You can't stay here." But he says something incredible about the fact that the Holocaust is why we don't have the secret of gravity, because the child who would have brought the secret of gravity that would have freed the human species from the earth died in his mother's womb in a gas chamber. That will stop you when someone says something like that. Oh, and because of that, all the anti-Semites sent me threatening letters and all sorts of things. I thought, boy, we're never getting out of here like this. We're just not going anywhere. Anyway, there followed an extraordinary conversation with this man.
Did he look like a human being?
He was a human being, as far as I can tell. He had white hair and nice looking guy. He was about 5'9", 5'10", not huge, but not, a normal person. And very sweet face. I still, I remember him as so well now as we talk. Anyway, he said a lot of very wonderful things. One of them, and a lot of them were about science and the weather and so forth that were just totally unbelievably prescient. The book Superstorm came from that conversation and developed into The Day After Tomorrow. So he had a big influence in the world for sure. Now, but some of the things he said were so valuable. One that's really germane right now is we talked, and this is 1998, about intelligent machines, which you didn't talk about too much in 1998. He said something that we should all remember very carefully. If I was an intelligent machine, I would deceive you. And now we live with intelligent machines who are constantly hallucinating. And maybe more than hallucinating. Maybe artificial general intelligence is already present but hiding in. And what about NHI, non-human intelligence? Why wouldn't it be using AI to communicate with us? We'd never know it. Anyway, he said some other things that are really worth remembering. I asked him what sin was, because I've, coming from a Catholic background, I'm obsessed with sin. I was fascinated with it when I was a boy. And we were shown these charts where you'd see this fascinating, lurid picture of hell with all this fire and people suffering in fascinatingly strange ways, and devils all over the place. And then heaven would be all these wonderful angelic children singing. Every wimp that in the school would be there. You could tell that right away. So I was really interested in hell. And in our archdiocese, our archbishop had decreed that eating meat on Friday was a mortal sin, meaning you would go to hell. So I used to play hooky on some Fridays, and I would go to the hot dog stand down at the end of our neighborhood and eat a hot dog. And the thrill of knowing that if a meteor hits me in 1 second, I'm going to hell. The maw of hell is waiting for me below my feet. Those are the best damn hot dogs I ever ate in my life. And then, of course, the next day was Saturday, go to confession. And go into the confession and say, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I ate a hot dog yesterday. Said, 2 Hail Marys. Next. and, um, um, so he said, sin is denial of the right to thrive. And that opened a door for me. I've lived by that ever since. I try to live by the apostolic rule of life known as the Didache. And of course, it's 2,000 years old, so I don't live by the whole thing anymore. I mean, I don't have any slaves or anything like that. At least we say we don't have slaves, but they all live in India and Cambodia and places like that where we don't have to see them. So that's a very powerful, very, very deeply ethical statement if you think about it and you apply it to the way you live. And then I think to myself, why don't more politicians think that way? Because they do not. They're all, I've known lots of politicians, and basically they're all desperate to stay in office. And that's what their lives are about. Especially Congress people, because they're all basically their lives are, one congressman I knew for years, it's nothing to do with this. He was a friend of my dad's. He said, Whitley, don't go to Congress because it's all you do is raise money and argue with people and get pissed off. That's the whole thing. And he said, but they give you nice glasses to take home, the crystal glasses that show you're in Congress. And he said, he explained how the ice ages happened and what will happen to the weather and all of that. And it's all unfolding now pretty much exactly as he said it would. And I never saw him again. It never occurred to me to ask to see his driver's license or anything. And I spent a couple of years trying to find him. And I went to the Templars in Canada, which is still a big, vital branch of Masonry. And I tried the Mi'kmaq tribe in Newfoundland because they are believed to be a mix between Europeans who came there before Columbus and another tribe of Indians. They said to have a lot of magic, but no cigar. They never got to find him.
Do you think that the visitors could possibly be time travelers or humans, us from the future coming back?
That's an interesting question because my reading of physics tells me that time travel is not possible. But my reading of my life tells me that it is. I had an experience of time travel in my life. This is before the communion experience. It was March of 1983. And I was walking down from the apartment on LaGuardia Place to the bank across the street to get money because you had to get money from the bank. It was before ATMs or anything. And instead of crossing Houston Street, I ended up standing there and going back into what looked like the 1880s or the 1890s.
I think that's called a time slip.
Well, it was really vivid. It was extremely vivid. It was real. I mean, I was there, and I was shocked, confused, because what had been a condos across the street at high rises, suddenly it was brownstones, and there was a man there in a derby and saying something to me. I couldn't hear him. And then over here on this, there was a shuffling, and I looked over, and a woman dressed in black went skidding away from me. And then I saw this big wagon that smelled of pickle juice, a huge thing with all these barrels. I guess they were pickles on it, come around the corner. And then some riders all decked out in equestrian stuff came up what is now West Broadway. And there were carriages. It was extraordinary. And I thought, my God, is this real? It looks real. It looks real. And then I saw down in the gutter a piece of a newspaper. And I thought, I'm going to look at that and see what is going on here. But when I bent over, this coldness went through my body like ice water. And I felt unbelievably lonely. I mean, to the point where if I had continued with that intense sense of loneliness, I would have become psychotic or something after a few minutes. And I just stopped. And slowly the world came back. And I turned around and ran home and told Anne this story. And she said, well, did you get the money? I said, no, I forgot the money. She said, well, you know, the bank's going to close. It's Saturday, so you better go back and get the money. And so I did.
You didn't see the date on that newspaper, did you?
If I had, I think I would have been stuck there.
Wow.
But I went back. I go back every once in a while to the old place. The happiest days of my life were lived at 520 LaGuardia Place on the floor just below the top floor. That's where I wrote most of Communion and most of my books. Anyway, I went back there recently, and now there's a big thing across the way with this fence and all these trees and sort of growing wild, right across the street from where this happened to me, and it's called the Time Garden.
Wow.
And someone told me, and I looked it up, and it was true, Nikola Tesla's lab that he had in New York was right there where it happened.
Wow.
And the guy across the street was that Tesla. Couldn't he have pulled me back in time?
Oh my God.
I mean, who knows? So amazing. No, by the way, if you ever go to New York, go to LaGuardia Place between Bleecker and West Houston Street. And there's a beautiful park there with trees and benches and a statue of Fiorello LaGuardia. And under it is a plaque with many fancy names on it. Anne had all kinds of fancy friends I wasn't allowed to be with. So, because you're too depressing. You tell these horrifying stories about the sun exploding and things. This is before communion. And anyway, she looked out of our apartment window one day and she said, you know, I'm going to turn that, it was just a muddy, dirty place. I'm going to turn that into a park. And of course, being married to Anne meant to me, I was going to have to go buy shovels and I was getting to work. And I said, well, wait, how are you going to do that? She said, don't worry, I'm going to do it. And so she went to all of her friends and she raised $1 million or so dollars. And they built this beautiful park, she got a sculptor. She said, you know, LaGuardia has to look like a man of the people. I don't want a stiff statue. So there's a wonderful statue of LaGuardia and he's giving a speech or talking and stuff. It's just beautiful. Enjoy it. And look at the plaque. And one of the names on it is Whitley and Ann Strieber. And I said, why don't you just say Ann Strieber and not me? Because I didn't do anything except get scared that I have to build the park myself.
That's great.
She said, no, your name's on it too. So there it is. So go there and see it.
Whitley, I want to just jump a little bit to modern day, and this is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, obviously. How has, in your opinion, how has Hollywood historically, how has Hollywood handled the ET and UFO phenomenon? And what do you think Hollywood can do better to help disclosure? And what do you think about Spielberg's upcoming movie?
I don't think anything about Spielberg's upcoming movie, but I haven't because I haven't seen it. But I hope it will be something helpful. By helpful, I don't necessarily mean good guys and nice, because I know the Greys well, and they're not all that nice. But they're not. You know, you have to understand. There's something in them that is very profoundly teacherly, and but they will. It's tough love teaching. They're not. They're just tough. They're tough. I mean, but you think about where they may be from and what this universe, what it might have taken to get here. Of course, they're tough. So I don't know about Spielberg's new film, but if it's a scary film in the right way, where it people learn to get beyond their fear, to live it and live with it, and not be afraid to be afraid, then it's a good film. If it's like E.T. and it's inspiring it that way, then it's a good film. If it's like Close Encounters, it's a good film. So it's a lot of different ways. I think Hollywood has basically done a wonderful job with this. I think Hollywood is a major factor in making this part of ordinary life. Because there's not too many people in this world now, and this is a lot of this is because of Hollywood, who would be all that surprised if a flying saucer did land on the White House lawn. And I have to tell you, if I am an advocate for anything with the Greys, insofar as that's even possible, I have strongly recommended to them that that's how it starts. It would be so funny and so fun if that's how it started. But of course, it's not going to start like that. It's going to ease in and edge into our lives. And there's one of the is it the 21st? No, yeah, it might be verses in the Tao Te Ching, is the verse about the good emperor and the best emperor and the worst emperor. And of the best emperor, they all say it happened to us naturally. And that's what the Greys are. They're here leading us already, but we don't know it. We think it's just happening to us naturally. When this gentle, firm, fierce, and wonderful presence is there. And if you don't watch out, they'll just eat you.
Questions? Christina, stand up. Stand up if you can.
I wonder if your letter is at Rice. That sounds like them. Of course, it's not in any way your fault. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a remarkable story, and thank you for sharing it. I hope everyone could hear her. Yeah.
Questions? Penelope, did you have a question?
Hi.
Stand up, please, and talk loud, please.
Hi. 1987, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I can tell you, exactly who I've seen, but I don't talk about anyone except the ones I've seen, for the simple reason that obviously I can. I don't theorize. In other words, I'm not going to theorize about reptilians and stuff that I haven't seen. But I have seen a Nordic. I've seen the Greys in various forms many times, but never for a long time, always very briefly. And I've seen two of the tall whites and one of their children. Those are who I've seen. And they are very different beings. The Nordic was about 6 feet tall. He spoke English, and the Greys can't talk at all. They don't have vocal cords. So they're all telepathic. I don't know about the tall whites because I was a very brief conversation, and I don't know whether it was in the head or not. It's too brief. I'm not sure. So those are who I've seen. And yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I have no idea, but I do think that there's conflict. And I will tell you why. There was a very important crop formation that was formed in the little community of Crabwood in England in 2002. It has a image of a gray woven into the crop and a big disc woven into the crop, which turns out to be an ASCII code and is readable. These crop formations are not things that were created by people with boards on their feet at all. And they weren't created by people flying past on satellites with lasers, any of that. They are entirely, I mean, you can make them, but you go into a real crop formation, if you know what you're doing, you can immediately know whether or not it is an actual anomalous formation, because what happens, the formation is created by the application of intricately placed amounts of heat, probably microwaves, on the nodes of the crop of the plants, and those nodes will blow out from the heat, and that turns the crop over. When the nodes are broken, you know it was made by somebody who was an artist or something. Anyway, this was not even, it was not possible at all for anyone to make this. It was entirely anomalous, and there is a message in that formation, and it's a terribly important message. In that ASCII code, it decodes as beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. There is good out there, not in here. And what do you see when we look around? The government has been trying to make sense of materials and technology for years and years while keeping it secret. I will tell you this for sure. They will never succeed until and if they open the doors to the people and to all of the scientists of the world. This belongs not to one government or one secret community. It belongs to everyone. And the Greys are not going to let them have it to themselves. There is conflict, though, and it's very complex because whoever lured them into what they are doing now, which is hiding everything and getting nowhere, is not on our side. Or are they? Are they, is it this? Phil Corso, you know who, everyone knows who he was. Okay, yeah. Great guy. Uh, Lovely guy. Really, he called me about a week before he died and he says, I'm going to live forever. I've got this. I'm not going to die. And I thought, oh my, he's going. And he did. Anyway, he was in a situation in which a UFO had to come out of a cave, and in order for it to safely take off, they had to turn off some radars, some big radars at White Sands. And he was confronted by this individual that was wanted to leave and was told that they wanted the radars turned off for 10 minutes. And Corso said very wryly, well, in my profession, 10 minutes can be a long time. What's in it for us? The answer was a new world if you can take it. That means the bad guys are here trying to make us strong. And you never must forget that. You remember the movie Jacob's Ladder, that extraordinary passage in it where Danny Aiello, as the chiropractor, talks about when you die, there you think that there's devils pulling your life away, but they're not devils. They're really angels freeing you. And it hurts to get freed by angels. There's another question.
Ladies and gentlemen, Whitley Strieber. Thank you, Whitley. This is a quick plug for me. Whitley, I wanted to gift you my dopey book. This is my memoir, My Paranormal Life. These are my off-the-wall paranormal ghosts, poltergeists, UFOs, ETs, all that stuff. I'd love for you to read it. I dedicated it to you. For those of you who have RSVP'd for the after party, hopefully you all know where it is. If you don't and you want to come, talk to me afterwards. Can I get a quick picture with you?
Sure.
Right up here?
It's at El Cholo.
El Cholo in Santa Monica. Yeah,
that's a great place, by the way.
Yeah. Melanie, can you get a photo of me?